That's all, folks. Sure is a terrific ending. And in this conclusory episode of the first season of Stick to Shorts, it seems like as good a time as any to give this catchphrase a moment of consideration. While it took many forms over the years, this was the signature sign-off for the Looney Tunes series from its premiere cartoon in 1930 to 1964. However, in the earliest years of the studio, That's All, Folks was not the sign-off for the Merry Melodies series. Those cartoons ended with a character saying, "So long, folks."
So long, folks.
In 1934, the Merry Melodies dropped So Long and were unified with their sister series under one catchphrase, just in time for the studio's transformation in the mid to late 30s that was outlined in our introductory episode. And yet, between the two sign-offs, it's kind of strange that That's All is the one they went with, right? I mean, so long is a way that someone says goodbye. See ya later. That is all, folks, is not a goodbye. It's a definitive statement about all things. It's a particularly ill-suited statement for the original context in which these cartoons appeared, a program of varied entertainment in which these shorts were not the feature presentation. It wasn't all, folks. The movie people paid to see hadn't even started yet. In Kevin S. Sandler's book, Reading the Rabbit, scholar Donald Crafton considers the implications of this in his essay, The View from Termite Terrace, Caricature and Parody in Warner Brothers Animation. He writes, "For most viewers, the real movie began when the cartoon was over. Perhaps the strident declaration, 'That's all, folks,' was a provocation from the animators, an assertion that the interesting part of the evening's program was already over, and the feature to follow was a mere anticlimax." Hello, all you happy people. Welcome to the season finale of Stick to Shorts. My name is JD Hansel, and this is a show about classic cartoons. Now, what do I mean by classic cartoons? Animated TV shows? No. Animated feature films? Heck no! I'm talking about classical, theatrical, animated shorts. These are the cartoons produced for movie theaters during the classical Hollywood period. That makes this, technically, a movie review podcast. So if you know what movie review podcasts are like, this is that. The only difference is that these movies are about 7 minutes long. Listeners, as you may know, this season has been a sort of panorama of the classic cartoon landscape. I've called it a cartoonorama for reasons that are still unclear even to me. It's an introduction to some of the major studios and filmmakers that played a big part in the American animation industry. And it's sort of a pilot season to make sure this podcast works before I go any further. Well, folks, I need some help. Just making sure I'm on the right track and tying together any big ideas, narratives, or themes we can find in this first season. To that end, I've brought in the host of one of my favorite podcasts. Joining me for this really necessary trip through Toontown once again is the host of the Fantastic Miss Piggy Podcast, Danny Horn. Welcome back, Danny.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So, Danny, from your perspective, is the podcast working? Like, is it teaching you anything? Is it successfully making any arguments that stand out? Where are we? This is my checkup, I guess.
Yeah.
Where are we doing? Or where are we doing? How are we doing?
I would say, like, one thing that I really like about the podcast is that you're not just talking about whether the short is funny or not. You're also talking about the aesthetics.
Okay, how
Like,
so?
I went back and I re-listened to a bunch of episodes, and I noticed that the word beautiful comes up a lot. Like the machine in Superman is beautiful. The way that Mickey Mouse moves is beautiful.
Yep.
The way a sign stretches or a facial expression. You're not just talking about whether it's funny. You're also approaching it as a work of art and appreciating what it looks like and how it makes you feel. And I think that's something you can say about these theatrical cartoons, which you can't say about most TV cartoons, like the Flintstones or SpongeBob or whatever. Like, there are a lot of not beautiful TV cartoons. But something that's happening during the period that you're talking about, like the reason why it's the golden age of animation, is that Disney kind of led the way in terms of making cartoons beautiful.
Yeah.
And the other studios had to follow that idea, each in their own way.
Yes, all in totally different ways. Yeah.
And so that's one of the threads of story that's been developing.
Yes, the question of what beauty means and what is appealing, what is lovely, what is art in these cartoons is something that's going to keep evolving throughout in really interesting ways. I didn't notice that I did that, but that sounds like me. It sounds like me. I think it's a little bit more interesting than just going, haha, this is funny. But also at this point, once I've watched these cartoons a few times to prep for the show, I don't even know. They don't make me laugh anymore. I don't notice if they're funny at a certain point. You know, like I can choose to appreciate a certain joke because I remember when it was funny to me. But there is some way in which like doing this show completely gets the cartoons that I'm talking about out of my system. And
Right.
I think I like that. I think I like that I'm getting to process this stuff. This is probably what I needed. Do you have any other notes about the show before we go forward? Any corrections? I believe there was a word you wanted to stop me from pronouncing incorrectly.
Well, you do have the weird idea that somebody might pronounce historian as historian.
Yeah, I've heard it before.
I don't know where you got that from.
Okay.
It's not from English. It's not from people who speak English.
I mean, like in England, maybe. You're saying that's not real.
You asked for a note. You insisted on this particular note.
Yes, I
you this
did.
particular note.
Okay.
It
So
is
it's
historian.
finalized. It's done. It's animation historian,
Yes.
animation history.
Yes.
And with that, this week's trip through Toontown takes us to 1940. The studio is Warner Brothers, the director is Friz Freleng, and the cartoon is You Ought to Be in Pictures.
I'd be famous on the screen, the greatest ever seen. Oh, how my feet would go. Bill Robinson is slow. Fred Astaire never could top this one.
This short is a hybrid of animation and live-action footage in the style of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. In fact, this cartoon is cited as the inspiration for that film. I'm not sure how that works when I know that movie was based on a book, but at least this is the lore. The lore is that it comes from this. The story begins at the Leon Schlesinger studio, where the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoons were made. When the animators go to lunch, the drawings of Porky Pig and Daffy Duck come to life, and Daffy convinces Porky to quit cartoons and go to the main studio lot to star in live-action features. As Porky gets chased by a security guard, Daffy tries to convince Schlesinger that he should be their top-billed star instead of Porky Pig. This film is our introduction to one of the major directors of classic animation, Friz Freleng. In fact, for Friz, this cartoon is actually processing a real moment in his life, so it's worth taking the time to share a little bit about his journey. And I'll admit that most of my information here comes from an interview with Friz that I'll link to in the show notes, and mostly the documentary Friz on Film, which means that all the usual disclaimers about the historical accuracy apply here in terms of people's faulty memories, egos, any edits. Take this with a grain of salt. Okay. So Friz is one of our Kansas City guys. Like this is going to come up a lot in this podcast that like so many of the most important people in animation history started in Kansas City, Missouri. So as a young man, he answered an ad in the paper that was for an office boy who could draw. That's all the information he had. And then when he arrived, he saw it was for United Film Ad Service, which was making animated cartoons. He immediately decided, like before walking in the door, like, oh, I'm not good enough for that. He didn't go in to meet anybody. He just left, told his mother, somebody else got the job. Weeks later, he would find that the same ad was in the paper again. He attributed this to fate wanting him to be in the cartoon business. And so he finally worked up the nerve to go in and ask for it. And he got the job and found himself working in the cartoon business alongside Hugh Harman and Rudy Ising, who you might remember from our first episode, and I think they've come up a few times. They basically started the Looney Tunes with Friz Freleng before they went off to MGM. Also here is Ben Hardaway, also known as Bugs Hardaway, who is the namesake for Bugs Bunny. Ub Iwerks was there and became something of a mentor for Friz Freleng. Ub Iwerks was the first person to draw Mickey Mouse. He was like an essential part of the core Disney team. And of course, who else should be working there at United Film Ad Service but the man himself, Walt Disney. so much of the crew was in this one building working for a company that we don't think of at all. That was like primarily in the business of what? Like, I guess using films to advertise for newspapers or something. I still don't get what the company was. It's because it's one of those things where, like, at that time period, the way that cartoons in the silent era got, like, made it to animated form on the big screen was like, it was sort of an extension of the newspaper business. Like, it came with the newsreels in a way, you know? I'll get into this in the next season. I won't spend too much time on it right now.
Well, you're saying that comic strips kind of evolved into...
Comic strips weirdly evolved into animated cartoons. Yes, like newspaper funnies evolved into animated cartoons. And so Friz just kind of ends up being part of that. Someone recommends that he gets from the library the same book on how to do animated cartoons that Walt Disney had just checked out a little bit before. And he finds himself just kind of immersed in this world. So, of course, Disney went off to Hollywood and then soon enough desperately needed more people and very passionately wrote letters to Friz Freleng, being like, who didn't even really know very well, being like, you gotta come out to Hollywood and work for the studio. And then it turned out that Friz and Walt did not get along at all.
Oh dear.
In part because Friz was right that his craft was, at least at this point, not actually as strong as the other people in that building. He had some reason perhaps to feel like he might have not been quite good enough for the job or not really qualified. And then starts a series of career changes for Friz Freleng. Like, not really career changes, just job changes for Friz that I could not quite keep track of. Because he has left United Film Ad Service in Kansas City to join Disney in Hollywood, then leaves Disney and I think is working on Oswald cartoons for Charles Mintz before Walter Lantz takes over the Oswald cartoons. So Friz joins up with Hugh Harman and Rudy Ising. I don't even know if they have the whole idea for a series. All that they do is come up with like a 3-minute long simple animation of this character called Bosco. That's pretty much just him singing a song. And it's like, look, we've got a cartoon character who is able to sing, make a whole song, and like words and dialogue come out of his mouth, which Mickey Mouse himself as a character was not quite doing yet. And they just tried selling this to various studios. And while waiting for someone to buy into this not finished idea for a cartoon series, he then has to take a job with someone else, and I think ends up animating the Crazy Cat cartoons at yet another studio, before finally Leon Schlesinger greenlights Looney Tunes, brings in Harman and Ising, Friz Freleng is back into the fold, and he gets himself situated at the job that he would have for a little while, which was Looney Tunes. And you might say, for a little while? Wasn't Friz Freleng making these for a long time? Eventually. We'll get to that. So in his time in the 30s at Schlesinger, he eventually kind of stumbles into creating this, what was, at least for a while, the studio's biggest star, Porky Pig.
So actually, can we talk about how that happened? Because
Yeah, please.
I find it hard. I find it hard to believe that Porky Pig got famous.
Yeah, it's pretty
I know
shocking.
that he did. Every book tells me that he was.
Right.
But I'm looking at the character. I'm looking at what year was it? 1935. I haven't got a hat.
Yeah. So
Porky
this
Pig.
first cartoon is I Haven't Got a Hat, which is an ensemble piece that was meant to pitch a whole variety of characters that are all animals as school children.
Most of them are terrible.
Yeah.
Most of them are terrible. Oswald the Owl. There's he's awful, and Miss Kitty is just dreadful. And really, the stars of that short are Ham and X, the two little dogs who sing the title song, I Haven't Got a Hat.
100% yes.
The only good thing in that cartoon. They're amazing. Porky Pig is very much like Miss Kitty and Oswald the Owl and all the other failed characters. And he's not that funny.
Nope.
In the movie that the short that we're gonna discuss, I have You Ought to Be in Pictures. He's not funny in that either.
Not particularly, no.
Was Porky Pig funny?
I don't. So there are
This is my
more.
question.
Porky Pig, I think, eventually becomes kind of funny, but is much less distinct than his co-stars in terms of his comedy style. Like, this is not a Daffy Duck or Bugs Bunny level character at
That
all
leaps out at you, right.
in terms of comedy chops or intensity or just appeal.
He has a stutter.
Yeah, and that's his thing. Like, truly, in his first cartoon, the big idea for Porky Pig is, hey, funniest joke you've ever heard. What if a guy stutters?
Listen, my children, and you shall hear the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April.
That's mostly it. Like, it's a little more complicated because sort of the idea is like he's working to get to a particular word.
That is the one joke.
Recitation for school. And once he finally gets there and like unlocks his last word, then he's able to like very quickly move on into the next action that he has in his recitation, waving a flag or whatever, and then goes right back into the work of getting through his next line. And that is all.
Well, the one joke that develops then is that he starts out trying to say a word, but and then comes out with a different word.
Yeah.
Which is cute. I will give you that. It's cute. He does it in You Ought to Be in Pictures, and it's funny-ish.
Yes. It is funny-ish when he tries to say, I already have a job, and ends up having to say, I already have a position.
Exactly, yes.
So I have some further notes about Porky's stuttering because it actually comes from a very real, authentic place in a couple of different ways at different times. So what I mean by that is originally Porky Pig was played by Joe Darty, an actor who stuttered, because Friz Freleng was desperately looking for something to make his character stand out, especially vocally, when so many cartoon voices in the mid-30s were still just a copy of the Mickey Mouse voice, basically. So he called up the casting department and said, get me someone who stutters, basically. And ended up with this actor, Joe Darty, who just is stuttering to a large degree in these original, in like the first Porky Pig cartoons. And then they ran into a problem because of that, or because the system was not designed to accommodate that, where as they recorded, they ended up going over budget because of the amount of time that they spent trying to get the takes right so that they could time the jokes right. It's very difficult to take something that is authentic and turn it into a very carefully planned joke. And so with that in mind, the character was ultimately recast with Mel Blanc, who is just imitating the stutter. It kind of stinks for Joe Darty, but he did go on to get more work. I don't think he ever got a part that was ever as big as the part of Porky Pig, but he eventually ends up in very, very small parts, basically just as an extra in movies like the 1954 A Star is Born, Around the World in 80 Days from 1956, and East of Eden in 1955. But the other thing that makes the Porky performance pretty authentic, even when it is Mel Blanc, is that this thing that Porky does, where he tries to say one word, it doesn't work, and so he has to substitute another, is really a thing that people who stutter do as a sort of workaround. It is a tool to manage stuttering. People who stammer learn to, like, practice when they can sense that a problem word is coming up, a word that they're just not going to be able to get out.
They find another word.
They have to think of a substitute, another way of saying it, and do that, and then they can keep on going. That's a thing that I think is worth keeping in mind when talking about these cartoons. So I went and listened to a podcast hosted by someone who stutters. The podcast is called Stuttering is Cool. The host did an episode talking with other people who stammer about the character Porky Pig, just to get some different opinions and be like, so what do we make of this guy? Like, do we like Porky Pig?
Is this our hero, or is
our villain, or our biggest problem, you know?
Being fun of us.
And pretty consistently, they agreed that Porky Pig himself is actually fine and they do not mind the character at all. They don't really mind the way that he's handled for the most part. I don't know that they had seen I Haven't Got a Hat. I think that would have led to some different results. But
he has the stuttering vote.
But yeah, by and large, the feeling was in his cartoons, it's not like anyone's making fun of him for this. And for the most part, they do have to find something else for him to do to be funny. Like, even in I Haven't Got a Hat, we don't see the other kids laughing at him. You know, like the punchline is going to be that the substitution ends up being a longer and more complicated word than what he started with, usually. Right. And so it's kind of nice, actually, that there's so much film in existence because of all these Porky Pig cartoons in which someone who stammers is just treated like a normal guy, where absolutely nobody comments on the stammering and no one tries to act like it's just, you know, like it's only a feature of anxiety or something like that, which is often how it's misrepresented in media. It's just not even close to being the weird thing in a Looney Tunes cartoon that he's in. Right. Do they ever figure out something funnier for Porky? I think eventually they do. Like, he gets more angry and aggressive for a while, I think, in some of the Chuck Jones cartoons. And just in all the cartoons generally.
The later Porky Pigs, like after he was a star?
Much later, like 40s through 50s, you start to see a more aggressive Porky. But then that all changes in the 50s when Chuck comes up with a totally different Porky and Daffy dynamic that you see in like Robin Hood Daffy, Deduce You Say, and of course Duck Dodgers, where Porky becomes sort of the Bugs Bunny in those, where he's kind of just slick and chill. He's cool, and relaxed. He's cool. Porky's deal becomes he's cool, while Daffy Duck has a hot temper. Right. And I think that Porky Pig is pretty funny, but mostly because he is making Daffy much funnier. Right.
Well, he's a straight guy there.
Yeah. But he's a much more compelling straight man in those cartoons, for my tastes, than he is in a lot of these earlier cartoons.
So I think the cartoon that we're talking about today, and we are talking about this cartoon today.
Eventually, we'll see.
Okay, the cartoon that we're talking about today is that I think it's right on that cusp, where Porky has been a star for what, like 5 years by that point? Yeah. Been a major character, and he is now at the point where he's going to get replaced. And he's going to get replaced first by Daffy, and then A Wild Hare comes out like 4 months after this cartoon. So now Bugs Bunny is just on the horizon. So this is Porky kind of realizing he's not going to get anywhere else at Warner's. It's not going to get better for him than it is in 1940. And so what he does in this film,
he tries to get out.
And that's why this is a profoundly depressing cartoon.
Yes, it is.
By the end, as we will discuss.
So to understand this cartoon and the history behind it, why this cartoon that we're talking about exists, it's important to understand that animators generally were trying to get out at this point. We're trying to get away. It was commonplace for animators at the Warner Brothers studio to say, you know what? I'm tired of working here in Termite Terrace. I want to get out of here. And they would run over to the Fleischer studio in New York, which listeners may remember from the Superman episode. The studio that did the Betty Boop cartoons, the Popeye cartoons. And it was sort of a running joke at the studio that they would eventually always come back. They would go over to New York, and like there's a joke in their internal paper, whatever you call, like their internal magazine, basically, that they had at the studio, that I read a little bit from in the Hollywood Steps Out episode. That's, you know, full of jokey stuff, poems and things that are kind of joking about their position as animators at the Warner Brothers studio. This is also in the Donald Crafton essay in Reading the Rabbit, by the way, that I talked about in that episode. There's a joke that Leon Schlesinger has just purchased the Fleischer studio to establish some sort of transportation, like a shuttle of sorts that takes you directly to the Fleischer studio and then right back. You don't even have to get it as two separate tickets. You can get on the one that takes you immediately back to Leon Schlesinger's studio. Like, so this is the context, is that people always go to Fleischer, but they always return because Fleischer is not going to be that much more glamorous than Warner Brothers. It's not MGM. MGM, as we've been talking about for several episodes in this season,
they got the money.
They've got the money. It's the glitz and glamour studio. They've got time for you to work on the cartoons. They've got pretty good pay for the animators relatively, and status, because at this point, what's happening at MGM just a couple years before this cartoon is made. They've taken over their cartoon department from Harmon and Ising, brought everything in-house, and actually set up their animation staff on the studio lot. So, like, their animators are eating in the commissary with, like, people in the actual MGM live-action studio. Like, they're legit. Like, you're getting some respect at this point if you go over to MGM.
Right.
Because they're really invested in trying to compete with Disney, get those Academy Awards, show that they're the best, most prestigious studio. So, they actually make an offer to Friz Freleng to leave the Looney Tunes studio behind, go to MGM, and they're making it sound like it's a great deal. Here's a clip of MGM animator Joe Barbera talking about that experience.
One of the first gentlemen I worked with was Friz Freleng, who they had hired away from Leon Schlesinger's studio, which is now Warner Brothers. And they had told him that they were going to do this and this, and he was very unhappy because he ended up doing the Katzenjammer Kids. I don't know if anybody ever heard of them, but it was a comic strip. And MGM did a lot of research, and they said, this is it. Katzenjammer Kids is going to be the biggest hit that anybody ever had, and Freleng was going to be one of the directors on it. Of course, we were just starting war with Germany, so the last thing we needed was a comic strip or an animated cartoon with the people speaking with German accents. You know, Das ist and Dummkopf and all this kind of stuff. So Friz was very unhappy.
So here's a quote from Friz Freleng himself that I've got from the book Of Mice and Magic by Leonard Maltin. He's talking about the new producer at MGM at the time, Fred Quimby, a name you may have seen at the beginning of many a Tom and Jerry cartoon. He says, I was tempted by Fred Quimby through flattery of my work at Warner's, and it increased almost double of what I was earning at Warner Brothers. Of course, after I had committed myself to MGM, Leon Schlesinger offered me more to stay at Warner's, but he was too late with his offer. I was committed to MGM in August, but my contract with Schlesinger expired in October 1937. During the period from August to October, MGM's top brass bought the rights to The Captain and the Kids. I balked at making these cartoons into an animated series and expressed myself thusly, but to no avail. MGM said they were dedicated to making good cartoons, and they thought that this being printed in so many papers would make it a popular cartoon. I was forced to prove them wrong. You kind of feel for the guy.
Yeah.
This should have been good. We've been talking for much of this season about Tex Avery's move to MGM and how freeing that was for him. Mm. And I talked about that for good reason, because that was generally how this worked. You go to MGM and things brighten up for you. That's what should have happened. But for whatever reason, due to bad, executive decisions, Friz was put in a position of adapting something that he just couldn't make funny. None of the directors there could make it funny. Mm-hmm. And the Captain and the Kids cartoons, which, again, I think it was based on something called the Katzenjammer Kids. Mm-hmm. From what I can tell, that is all the same thing.
It's two naughty children, two naughty twins. And
so Friz was miserable. And
how long was he there?
He was there for a pretty short spell.
Well, then, but isn't You Ought to Be in Pictures is like the first cartoon that he made when he came back?
Correct. And there's a good reason. He comes back and is so grateful that Leon Schlesinger just immediately took him back. The day that Friz's contract was about to expire, he gets the call from Leon Schlesinger, just being like, hey, why don't you come over here? Yeah. And so he's back by mid-April of 1939, from what I'm seeing. Yes, he left in September of 37. So this is like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And pretty much right away, he starts working on You Ought to Be in Pictures. And in case you haven't noticed, this cartoon is about what just happened to Friz, where he got ambitious. He thought he could maybe get something better, get a better deal, goes onto the main studio lot for the glitz and glamour of it all, and immediately finds out, oh, this is not good. This is not for me. I've got to go back. I just hope Leon Schlesinger will take me back. Yep. And Leon immediately did. This cartoon is his thank you to Schlesinger to a large degree, it's like it's his signed, sealed, delivered, you know, like the Stevie Wonder song that's like, hey, I'm back at Motown again. Thanks for having me back. I'm dedicated to you now, not going away again. This is that. The credits on this cartoon are story by Jack King, animation by Herman Cohen, music by Carl Stalling, and of course voices by Mel Blanc. We'll credit the live-action cast as they appear. We should also talk about another thing right at the top of the cartoon, the title, You Ought to Be in Pictures, which is a little bit strange because it is from the song You Ought to Be in Pictures. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they changed it here for the title of this cartoon, but that's a 1934 song by Dana Seuss and Edward Heyman, almost immediately recorded and popularized by Rudy Vallee, very popular singer at the time. It was featured in the Ziegfeld Follies of 1934, notably a stage show, not a movie, yet somehow Warner had the rights to this song for a very long time. It was later, it was later covered by a number of artists, including Connie Stevens, but that's like way after. I think Doris Day recorded it. That's way later. It's a love song about how you, the listener, are so wonderful and attractive and good at kissing that you should be a movie star. It names many stars of the era, including Joan Crawford, Mae West, Greta Garbo. I love this song. I think it's really lovely.
I do too.
I also have in my notes that I hate this freaking song, and that's also true. My initial reaction to the song You Ought to Be in Pictures is just, oh, it's that song. Oh, utter loathing, fuming, because
why? It's so cute.
The instrumental gets used over and over in these cartoons and also in like DVD menus and stuff. Like if you put in a Golden Collection DVD for these Looney Tunes cartoons,
it'll be
over and over again. You're just hearing wah 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 wah, like it's just quacking at you again and again. And I'm like, I hate this song. But that was my reaction before I heard the words. And then I went and listened to the Rudy Vallee version and listened to him sing at me about how nice I am.
It's
and
very
I'm like,
charming.
This is really pretty. This is the sweetest song. No wonder it was a thing that they circled back to. It's very good.
And if you should kiss the way you kiss when we are all alone, you'd make every girl and man a fan worshipping at your throne. You ought to shine as brightly as Jupiter and Mars. You ought to be in pictures, my star of stars.
And you know what? Another fact about this song. Dick Van Dyke sings it to Miss Piggy in the 1979 special, The Muppets Go Hollywood. And it's adorable.
Wow, I had no memory of that. But I guess now I'm playing a clip.
Yeah.
You ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see.
Oh, Richard, I ought to be in pictures.
My star.
Your star?
My star.
Oh, Richard.
My star of stars.
We begin with a sign that says, Warner Brothers Pictures Incorporated present Leon Schlesinger Productions, home of Looney Tunes Merry Melodies. We then see more of the building as the staff goes into work. An animator is drawing Porky Pig, and we cut into a tight shot of the Porky drawing that's basically from the animator's point of view. So there's a still image of the live-action hand that's being animated, so it sort of looks like it's drawing the rest of Porky. It's very crude, like Monty Python kind of stuff. Animation-wise,
it's just the hand. It's like cut and paste.
It's odd. And honestly, you know what? Doesn't look like a very good cartoon. That's just Porky Pig standing there.
I know, with a blank expression on his face. And at that point, the animator, he draws one picture of Porky Pig, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm tired."
We don't know what he was doing before this, but it definitely doesn't look like he's got the usual stack of papers there.
This is not the iWorks drawing, like feverishly drawing 5,000 pictures all by himself of a cow getting strangled.
No, absolutely not.
No, he just does one little cover page shot.
And he's done.
He's done.
Yeah, well, so the animator here is Fred Jones, who actually worked at the studio. No relation to Chuck Jones. And so I think maybe the reason why we've heard of Chuck but never heard of Fred is because
He only did one.
he only drew one picture of Porky
One
Pig, and that was
frame.
enough. But admittedly, he drew a drawing so powerful that it sprung to life. And so maybe he invests all of his energy into one very magical drawing. And that's
I
enough.
think it's the opposite. I think it's that the drawings have to get up and move around because he's too goddamn lazy to draw them doing anything.
Okay. You may have a point.
So he's out.
There is a framed drawing of Daffy Duck on the wall, like he's their grandmother or something. What's he doing up there? Not any more notable or exciting than the drawing of Porky Pig. Seems to be by the same guy. This is the first time we've covered a Daffy Duck cartoon on this podcast, which maybe should not be that remarkable because we're still a small number of episodes in, but still, it's our first Daffy Duck. Danny, do you have any Daffy Duck thoughts?
I have so many Daffy Duck thoughts.
All right.
No,
I should first say for context that we're pretty early in Daffy Duck's filmography here. This is about his 11th cartoon. It's Friz Freleng's first time directing Daffy Duck, as the character was so new. And so most of those 11 cartoons would have been while Friz was away at MGM. But most strangely, this is Friz's first time really directing Porky Pig since he created the character for I Haven't Got a Hat. He had given Porky cameos in a couple of other little things, but was mostly focused on developing the other characters from the ensemble cast that we don't really remember today.
He did the beans. Yeah. Beans and Ham and X.
But this is the first time after the cartoon in which Friz Freleng created Porky Pig that he's circling back to this character after he's been developed by Avery and Clampett. They're the ones who latched onto Porky. We're like, hey, we're going to pick this character because at least he kind of has a thing. The stutter isn't much, but it's something distinct. We can work with this character and get him into something.
So this is Freleng's opportunity to catch up.
Yes,
said,
this
hey,
is
guys,
his catch-up cartoon.
What I miss.
Yeah, and he missed the development of the studio's 2 stars. They finally have characters that people like. And now he's got to figure them out. And he ends up with a really interesting and different take on Daffy. So I want to hear your Daffy Duck thoughts, Danny.
I love Daffy. I love him. He's my favorite.
Oh, really?
It's always the duck. Yeah, my favorite Disney character is Donald Duck. My favorite Warner Brothers character, Daffy Duck.
That's fair.
I don't know if I have thoughts. It's
I thought you said you had lots of thoughts.
I do, but they're internal to the cartoon.
Oh, all right. Then we will get to the other thoughts later. That's okay. Yeah. At 12 o'clock, the animator loudly announces lunchtime, and we see sped up footage of all the animators running out of the building. One man runs back for his suit jacket, and it's thrown at him through the door. Why he would need that in Los Angeles, I will never understand. We get a glimpse of Chuck Jones running toward the camera as he leaves, making sure that even when we can't process who we're seeing, we're paying attention to him. Bob Clampett is in this moment as well. Anyway, this footage, for what it's worth, is a gag from their Christmas Party film. They use this 35 millimeter camera that they had for reference footage to make little films of themselves and each other full of cartoon-like jokes made with live action people that they would then watch at their Christmas parties. And at least one of them still survives. It's pretty funny. It's a bonus feature somewhere on some number of DVDs and Blu-rays. And you'll notice a lot of the footage that is in this cartoon is just recycling what they already had for that.
Well, one thing that I think is so interesting about this moment is that this is it sort of sets up a theme that's going to recur throughout the rest of the picture. That animation is labor rather than art.
Yeah,
because this moment of blowing a whistle and screaming lunch and everyone runs out, that's a factory thing.
Yeah, well,
that's not an artist creative endeavor thing.
No, not at all. And I mean, what's surprising is I also remembered there being some sort of bell or whistle blowing, and then rewatching it, I couldn't find any sound accompanied with that. It's just he sees the time, shouts lunch. But then the fact that everyone's eager to go, I mean, it is workers leaving a factory. They want to get out of there. The first big idea that this film has is the people who make the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoons are desperate to get out of there and not be working their shifts. They are desperate for their lunch breaks.
each of them has drawn one picture by now.
No, they're exhausted. They're wiped out.
They did a whole picture.
They wish they were working in the coal mines, by gosh. But also in the Christmas film, it's actually even more intense than that because you see studio exec Binder, Harry Binder? I should know this. I think it's Henry Binder. He is like holding them at gunpoint, walking them back into the studio with a shotgun when the lunch period is over. Back inside, the drawings of Porky Pig and Daffy Duck come to life. Daffy says, "Say, you want a good job?" Porky says, "But I have a good position." "Oh, you call this a job, working in cartoons? Pooh. I know where you can get a job in features as Betty Davis's leading man. $3,000 a week." Note that Daffy never specifies where. He just says, "I know a place where you can get a job," but then does not say, "It's at the Warner Brothers lot." Like, because that's going to end up looking bad too. And so, like, they're even though it's definitely the Warner Brothers lot, they just don't specify.
Did they have Betty Davis at Warner Brothers? It just occurred to me to ask that very complicated question.
Yes, she was a star with the Warner Brothers studio at the time.
Well, so this is then a commentary on the relationship of the items on the bill tonight.
Mm-hmm. How do you mean?
That what they're talking about is this relationship between the cartoon shorts and the features, mm-hmm. and sort of commenting on the next item in the schedule and saying everyone knows that one is more prestigious.
Yes.
Higher paying and a better job.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it is establishing that what comes next is the important thing, mm-hmm. to be sure. And also that nobody working in cartoons, even the cartoon characters, is good enough for the studio lot.
No, they are not.
Which is also, but the thing is, it's trying to not be specific about Warner Brothers, but that is in some ways specific to Warner Brothers at the time. Yeah. And does not apply to MGM.
Yeah, that this building is not on the lot.
Right, yeah, not certainly. It's
way down Sunset Boulevard, apparently.
Yeah. So, like, it is a weirdly critical movie about Warner Brothers. And I think that's why you can't see the Warner Brothers signage anywhere when you get to the lot. Like, they just can't circle and underline.
Right.
They're basically saying, like, hey, look at these jerks with this awful security cop who treat us like crap and make us work in this office where everyone's eager to get out for like,
Yeah.
It's a critical piece in a strange way. So this is where we start to see that Roger Rabbit logic taking shape, where, like, these are cartoon characters, mm-hmm. they are drawings, and also they work these jobs that are in the film industry where they have contracts with studios, and it's just they're the lowest class.
They are part of the factory as well.
They're very much part of the factory, but they are on the bottom rungs of the ladder in that factory. Mm-hmm. So, like, Porky was just drawn. We just saw him drawn. He has just now come into existence, and yet he already has a contract working in cartoons for Leon. And I guess I'm just wondering if each new drawing of Porky also comes to life. Are there a million Porky Pigs?
That's a lot of paperwork. If you gotta draw up a contract for every single flipping through.
Are they having to kill Porky after Porky after Porky? Oh, no. Is this the prestige? Like, I just don't understand the logic of. And we'll never get to know. But it's that thing where, like, Jessica Rabbit says, "I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way." So we know that she is a drawing. Canonically, everyone in Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a drawing, and yet they also walk around in physical space and have jobs for companies when contracts with a man.
Yes.
You cannot make it make sense, and yet this becomes the logic for how cartoons understand themselves for decades after. And in these shorts, like, Donald Duck is writing on his tax forms in a cartoon I hope we'll get to at some point, that his profession is an actor.
Right.
These characters think of themselves as being first and foremost actors who work at a cartoon studio. This is just their job. Like all of these other actors, it's just that it's a less classy job.
Right.
So Porky says, "Oh, I'm not good enough for that. Besides, I've got a contract here." Daffy assures Porky that he can get out of his contract, and he urges him to do it right away, saying, "You don't get an opportunity like this every day."
Yeah, kind of hustling him off the page and down to the floor, really before he has time to think.
Not really clear why he wouldn't get an opportunity like this every day.
Right, because they go out to lunch every day. But I like how this is now where they're developing Daffy Duck to be, where Freleng brings something that I think is more interesting than just the previous kind of like loony Daffy Duck, because that's how he starts.
Oh yeah,
it's just woo, 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 woo.
Yeah, pretty much everything up until this point is
Bouncing
Daffy
around.
is a guy who just bounces around going woohoo woohoo.
And here he gets a whole new attitude, a whole new
There's a new angle on
personality.
Daffy. Yeah,
he's
does.
a fast talker. He's a smooth operator, and this is going to recur. Like this is not. I know that there's supposed to be this clear line between like early Daffy and late Daffy, but this is kind of
this is bridging the gap.
Shade, a gradation. Yeah,
that's part of why it was interesting to make this the introductory cartoon for Daffy, because he doesn't look quite the way that we're used to him looking. But in terms of his personality, it's this interesting splitting of the difference between the early Clampett Daffy and the late Jones Daffy, in that he's still kind of bouncing around. He sings his little musical number. He's having lots of fun, and he's still a disruptive force in Porky's life, which is kind of like the definitive thing for Daffy, I would say, in his early cartoons. Like, yes, he's bouncing around, but also he is the disruption. He interrupts the plan and ruins the life of Egghead or Porky or whoever the hunter is, whoever else he's around. The doctor in, what is it, the Daffy Duck. He's a disruptive force, and that's still here, and he's just as obnoxious as he is in those, except it's obnoxious in a different way. Now he's conniving, like he's ambitious. He's got that ambitious quality and is going for stardom the same way that he's going to be going for stardom and trying to be the top dog when Bugs is the main star at the studio, all the way in the 50s. And it's those 50s cartoons, primarily, it's really Chuck Jones who gets the credit and the blame. I mean, depending on who you ask, either the credit or for people like that Daffy, or the blame for this version of Daffy Duck. But you can see Friz is laying the groundwork right here. And it's entirely possible that it's just because he's just gotten back to the studio and does not know this character yet.
That's a very good point.
And just kind of accidentally stumbles into laying down the foundations for everything that this character would become a decade later.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about serialized narrative, which this kind of is. As we talked about in the Superman episode, that serialized narrative basically just means like that you get audience reaction while you're still making the thing.
Right.
So you've got feedback as you're going through, and you can kind of change the story in order to lean towards what the public actually likes and what they don't like. And so this is Freleng kind of bringing in this new angle on Daffy that I think turns out to be productive. And his next Daffy cartoon is 1943 is Yankee Doodle Daffy.
Is that that might be the next one?
I believe that's his next one. And there he's also like hugely like fast talker, smooth operator. He's talking his way into Porky's life.
Yep.
Trying to get him to give his weird little nephew an entertainment job.
Yep.
And so if that's how Freleng sees him, I think that's more productive ultimately and more interesting than just pure screwy behavior.
Yeah, I think it makes for a much more complicated and interesting character. Yeah. There's one other interesting dynamic going on here that we haven't really addressed, which is this cartoon is called You Ought to Be in Pictures. He is already in pictures, which is to say, very often the characters in these cartoons will refer to the thing that they are in as pictures. They will comment on, what's the matter with this picture, right?
I do this to him all the way through the picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet here, pictures only means live action feature films.
Right. Yeah.
And also with that, there's this dichotomy established between animated, like if you get out of cartoons, then that means you get into features. The idea of a feature cartoon is not addressed or considered.
No.
Even though Snow White already exists, this is the year of Pinocchio and Fantasia. The cartoon feature exists, but
not here.
Friz Freleng is not acknowledging that, not dealing with that at all.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that means that Porky's ambition isn't just to be a star of feature films, even though that's how they're presenting it, but it is specifically to get out of animation entirely. That's the only way that he can conceive.
A higher calling, which is working opposite Betty Davis.
Yes. So thinking of this as an autobiographical piece, like this is the way that Friz has decided to represent and express his own ambition of like getting to the heights of just making cartoons for MGM is somehow this equivalent of getting out of cartoons entirely, not just to feature-length cartoons, but to live-action features. It's so strange how many things are being conflated here and what's not being addressed in order to make the logic of this cartoon make sense and what it tells me about how these people making this understand their position.
Yeah.
Notably, Daffy Duck, in another cartoon, Daffy Duck in Hollywood, that's like not that much later, he does get to be a director of feature films by the end of that cartoon. Spoilers.
That was before.
Oh, that was before?
That was 1938.
Oh, thank you.
That's one of his screwy.
Yes,
his screwy cartoon.
You're right. It's very much the Daffy that bites people on the nose.
Yes.
Sorry, there's another cartoon I think called in which Daffy runs around the studio a lot. That's later. That I mix up because it has a similar title. But yes, we do already see by this point that there is a version of this in which these characters can conceivably succeed at features when it's contained within the world of the cartoon, within the animated world. Once live action is introduced, then that just seems to be impossible for them.
Yeah.
And maybe I ought to wait until tomorrow. Oh, what's the matter? You scared? Go ahead and knock. No, I'm not afraid. Go on and knock. Louder. No. Like this.
Come in.
Inside, we see Leon Schlesinger at his desk.
Not a cartoon. Real human man.
A real human man.
Live on the screen.
Leon Schlesinger himself playing himself.
Yes.
You're not seeing him as a boss, where like he's picking up the phone going, I need more celluloid or whatever. Like it's not like that at all. You see him smoking a cigarette. He's got his reading glasses on. He's reading the newspaper. And it's like you've just walked in on Grandpa. This is a very different portrayal from what we see in Hollywood Steps Out, where in his moment in that cartoon, which we talked about a couple episodes ago, he's seen very, very briefly, but the idea seems to be, according to the essay that we were reading from Donald Crafton from Reading the Rabbit, that he's like deliberately put out of place among Hollywood stars. He just does not belong in the world of glitz and glamour at all, and yet he clearly wants to be.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that Tex Avery is going to show him in a way that reads as kind of critical, at least to us, certainly in a way that might have seemed flattering to Schlesinger, who would not have noticed that he was out of place at Ciro's. But to us, it's like, what the heck is that guy doing there? And that's kind of the point. Tex Avery, at that point, he's not on great terms with Schlesinger. That's shortly before he leaves, very angry at Leon Schlesinger.
Right.
This cartoon is when its creator, Friz Freleng, has come back to the studio, thankfully, and is like being embraced with open arms and has so much gratitude to Leon. And so you get this like really kind paternal figure. You're walking in on like your dad or your grandpa. He's kind of avuncular.
This is Uncle Leon.
It's Uncle Leon. In the same way that Walt Disney becomes Uncle Walt.
Yes. And this is the way that producers in Hollywood always treat people.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're very approachable. That's why everyone in Hollywood is smiling all the time.
Yes. So
like
they
have very, very supportive bosses.
When he sees Porky, he puts down his paper, gives Porky his full attention, welcomes him in, and he asks, "What's on your mind? What can I do for you?" Leon's not a very good actor, but you still you like him here. He seems very nice. Porky struggles to articulate what he wants until he finally blurts out, "What's Errol Flynn got that I haven't?" And note that the answer can't be that he hasn't got a hat, because we do see Porky holding his hat in the scene.
Good point.
Leon asks, "You sure you know what you're doing?" Porky says yes, so Leon tears up his contract. The torn contract falls into the wastebasket. It's a cartoon. Right,
it turns into a cartoon.
It turns into a cartoon when it is thrown into the basket, and I'm wondering if that plays into the reveal at the end somehow. Leon and Porky shake hands, and Leon says, "Don't forget me when you're a star," implying that Porky hasn't been a star.
And so that moment is where, so we haven't really talked at all about the fact that we're seeing live action and animation in the same frame. Mm-hmm. That Porky is being animated right on top of live action footage with Leon. Yep. And them shaking hands is an excellent effect They do that so well and so believably. I feel like, okay, I'm seeing on your
Okay.
face, maybe not. I think it looks great. And it
Well,
is
here's
one
the
of
thing.
the. there's-
Everyone but me agrees with you. I think it looks weird and breaks the reality of it, but for its time, it's pretty good and pretty cool.
I think it looks great. And it is one of the 3 times in the movie when there's actual physical contact where Porky
You noticed
interacts
this.
with a live human man.
I was wondering if you were going to notice that, like, throughout the cartoon, to like keep costs down and keep this as simple as possible, we almost only see Porky over photographs, not mapped onto any images that move.
Right.
And this is one of like they just 3 times establish like no, they like the movement
They
of the live
actually are
action
in the
people.
same- yeah,
they're
they
in the
actually are
same
in the
space.
same-
They
yeah.
can both move at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like the perfect time to do it, and it's really effective. The song Aloha Oi, also known as Farewell to Thee, plays in the background here as Porky is leaving. I don't think I noticed that the first time I saw it, but it's a funny little detail.
Good.
When Porky leaves, Leon picks up his paper again and says to us, with a wink, he'll be back.
Superman wink.
Leon Schlesinger. No, that doesn't work. Anyway, Porky leaves the building to find Daffy waiting outside as the title song now plays in a minor key, like it's a tragedy that Porky ought to be in pictures.
Yeah.
Did you quit? Did you quit? Daffy asks. Porky says yes, and Daffy is rubbing his hands villainously as he says, that's swell, that's swell, that's swell. Now you go out to the studio and tell them I sent you. Again, not naming who the studio is.
Right.
Porky gets into a cartoon car. Was that also drawn? We don't know. How is it bigger than the space that they had to draw on to make Porky? We'll never know. He gets into the cartoon car. He drives away. Daffy looks at us and says, now is my chance. Porky drives onto a studio lot owned by no particular company and goes right past the security guard, who calls after him, hey you, come back here.
In Mel Blanc's voice.
In Mel Blanc's voice. It's
Because
like
Mel
really-
Blanc voices the entire world.
He pretty much does. Like, for as much as this is cartoons coming out into the real world, it is also real people being pulled into a cartoon world where your voice has to be Mel Blanc.
Mel Blanc, yes.
It's quite
Except for
strange.
there's Leon Schlesinger, and then there's the rest of the world, which
Yeah.
is voiced by Mel Blanc. And so I don't know if you saw this, that they did that because they filmed all of this silent.
Yeah, yes.
There you go.
I saw this or heard this somewhere, that like they bothered to pay for the expense for Leon himself, because that's pretty crucial to making Leon A, believable, and B, willing to do this whole thing, or like for it to actually flatter his ego enough.
So he did his own looping.
That's true. He probably is.
No, that's what I read. Yeah, that all of this was silent camera.
Okay.
And that Leon looped himself,
Okay. That makes
and then
sense.
Mel Blanc looped all the rest of the people.
But what's interesting is I've also heard, and these things can both be true, it just makes me a lot more impressed with Leon's performance, that the audio was actually recorded first.
Oh, really? All right.
And so you're seeing these people lip syncing to pre-recorded audio. Or at least that's how it works with Mel's part. I don't know if it was different for Leon's part. So the studio cop here is played by Michael Maltese. The writer for the studio credited with writing One Froggy Evening, and also What's Opera Doc, Duck Amuck, Rabbit of Seville, Duck Dodgers, Feed the Kitty, and so many others, and Freleng's own Baseball Bugs, just to name a few. I really
all my
like the Maltese performance here. I think it's really funny.
He's the funniest thing in the entire
Absolutely.
cartoon.
I would say he is funnier
Hilarious.
than either of the cartoon characters in it.
Yes.
He's the funny one. You just watch
Yeah.
his performance and like how his rhythm with his movements is so musical and precise.
Yeah.
And
And also, I mean, and Mel Blanc's voice makes a big difference there, too.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, so you're Porky Pig.
and you want to go in there. And you want me to be a nice guy and let you go in there. And the whole time, Porky's nodding along happily. And this is where, like, I find Porky pretty funny here because he just does not clock the menace
Right, he's not getting
coming
it.
from
Yeah.
Maltese at all. And finally, the cop finishes, so I can lose my job. And, like, Porky keeps nodding for a second before it clicks for him. Oh, wait, no. And then finally the turn, well, I'm not a nice guy. And I'm not going to let you in. And I'm not going to lose my job. But I am gonna throw you out. And it's got like these long pauses between all of it because of how they recorded the audio, maybe like not knowing if there were going to be other reaction shots from Porky, I imagine. it's so strange, and yet it's such a compelling, like, he's lit strangely, and that just makes it more compelling.
And it's really funny that's such a moment that both of us memorized exactly how that goes and could do the whole thing.
I mean, I was reading from my notes, but
we got all the time. We got all that.
Yeah, like, it is the highlight of the cartoon, to
It's
be
really,
sure.
really good.
It's
It's
just
really
such a
good.
weird exchange. So it's not clear to me if the line, "So you're Porky Pig," is like, does that mean he's familiar with Porky Pig and is
Right.
like, yeah, oh, so you're Santa Claus? Like, is it that kind of thing? Where, like, he doesn't think that the person he is looking at in that moment is the actual Porky Pig?
Right.
Like, does he just not see that this is Porky and or just not believe that he would see Porky on the lot? Or is it more so like, he knows this is Porky Pig from cartoons, like, he's heard that name, and he's like, well, you're a cartoon, you're not supposed to be on the lot. Like, is that all that he means by, oh, so you're Porky Pig? You think you, a cartoon, get to be here on the studio lot?
Or do pigs show up all the time at the studio lot claiming to be Porky Pig?
Right, okay. Yeah, that's the other
trying to
possibility.
sneak their way onto the lot.
Or is it, again, the million Porkies theory, where they keep
right,
drawing
they
and
all
drawing and drawing
go, they
Porkies,
all
and so
come,
he just
yeah.
deals with this all day, another cartoon thing, being like, well, I'm Porky Pig. Oh, so you're Porky
You're Porky Pig.
So the studio cop grabs Porky's car, his whole car, and throws it off the lot. It just bounces away, boing, boing.
And that is the number 2 of the 3 times
Yes.
that Porky is touched by a man.
And we fade out. Hey there, JD from the future here. Well, the future in relation to the recording with Danny, not... Anyway, I've mentioned in past episodes that I might issue some corrections as needed in future episodes, and I've never been quite sure where to put that segment, so it's going here. Fortunately, I mostly just have to issue some clarifications, since I haven't received much in the way of corrections to historical inaccuracies, which either means that I'm doing a good job, or that the right audience for this show has not found it yet. In any case, here are some notes. In the Brave Little Tailor episode, I questioned how the tailor in the Brothers Grimm version of the story would squeeze water from a piece of cheese. My friend Katie Lynn brought it to my attention that, historically, this makes a lot of sense. They write, when made in the traditional way, as opposed to the modern way where various additives are included to keep it cheese, the cheese tends to want to return to its component parts, especially if left out in conditions that aren't cool and dry. So the detail that the tailor takes a piece of old cheese is important, since that means it is more likely to weep the way, since it's been left out for so long. Thanks, Katie Lynn. In the episode on Dumbhounded, I pointed out that the cartoon starts with a title card with Droopy's picture and name, despite claims that Droopy wasn't named until years later. I suspected that claim was correct and the card was just attached later. As it turns out, the version of the cartoon that we watched was in fact a reissue print. I was on the right track. Listener James commented to let us know, and James kindly included a link to a cartoonresearch.com article with information about MGM reissue prints, which should make it easier for me to identify them in the future. Thanks, James. In the Superman episode, I talked a little bit about rotoscoping, and I said, sometimes animators have used this to simply trace live-action footage, which ends up looking kind of strange and is generally frowned upon, but at best, the live-action footage is used as a guide. I meant to say, at its best, which sounds a little less disparaging, but even then, I think it sounds like I'm putting down this innovation. In truth, it was clearly valuable for its time, and different variations on it in the years since have continued to be valuable, and sometimes give a project a fun aesthetic. I should have been clearer that this is neat. It's a neat thing, the rotoscope. Also in that episode, we didn't reach any conclusion about whether Superman's power of flight was first introduced in the cartoon or the radio show. In fact, the radio show had already been making Superman fly. Speaking of Superman, at some point in this podcast series, someone mentioned Superman comic book writer Grant Morrison. We referred to them with he/him pronouns, when recently they have expressed a very casual preference for they/them pronouns. In any case, we respect the preference, and we'll keep this in mind for the future. Thanks to listener Katie for letting us know. And now, we return. Fade in, the studio cop welcomes Mr. McHugh to the lot. That seems to be a reference to Frank McHugh, who was an actor at the studio at the time. He was in the Roaring Twenties with James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. People at the time would have known who he was, but as we already talked about in the Hollywood Steps Out episode, it's going to be too hard for us now to understand the references in these cartoons. Yes. They will mean nothing to us sometimes.
Except the next one.
Porky comes in disguised as Oliver Hardy. Which is not the first time Looney Tunes did that joke. Like, I don't just mean not the first time they depicted Oliver Hardy, but the first time in which a character sneaks onto a lot by disguising himself as Oliver Hardy. It's a joke that they had done before. I can't remember where it was. Maybe I'll include it in show notes, or maybe someone can yell at me in comments. The cartoon I was thinking of is Hollywood Capers from 1935. It was directed by Jack King, and the character who disguises himself as Oliver Hardy to get past the studio gate is Beans. You know, Beans from I Haven't Got a Hat.
And that's funny. That is, I would say, that's Porky's one funny moment. And the entire thing, like that's the moment when Porky has a joke.
He gives a funny performance as Oliver Hardy.
He looks like Oliver Hardy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Porky's joke.
The guard says, "Hey you can't come in here like that." So is he saying there, like, Porky can't come in disguised as Oliver Hardy? Or when he's saying, like, hey, you can't come in like that, is he going, Oliver Hardy, you can't come in as a cartoon? It's indecent. Put on your live action suit. Porky runs from the cop chases after him, and Porky hides in a soundstage.
And hey, it's a big surprise. It's a Warner Brothers cartoon with a chase in it.
It's not much of a chase.
It's
pretty
those.
Immediately diffused. But yes, there is that for a moment. I thought it was going to be much more of him getting chased all around the Warner lot a la Animaniacs, and it is not.
Right.
Because he's in a soundstage. You're seeing a movie being filmed that's stock footage that they already had from some other Warner Brothers thing. I don't think I found what it was yet. Again, angry comments from all you cartoon fans. Got to get you to listen somehow. This is how. The director is played by Jerry Chinicki, who was one of Friz Freleng's animators. And we see Henry Binder as the Grip. He's specifically playing the guy who's about to throw Porky out of the building. Mm-hmm. And he was seen next to Schlesinger in Hollywood Steps Out, actually, because he was Schlesinger's top executive at the studio. Porky sneezes so powerfully that it knocks over a table of film reels, ruining the take, and the director promptly has him thrown out. The studio cop sees him, yells at him, and starts...
This is, by the way, that's number 3.
It's the third interaction. There is another time where they bother to put the cartoon character over moving footage.
Yes, there's one more. There's one more where it's
But you're right.
Where it's
third
Daffy,
interaction.
This is the third time that he actually touches a person.
Which is it's enough to sell it.
Yeah.
And so the studio cop sees him, yells at him, and starts walking toward him, which is enough for Porky to hop in his car and speed away. Porky drives into the 1936 Western California Mail, being chased by a sort of...
by horses.
Stampede of horses. And somehow ends up outside the studio.
He's in the Hollywood Hills. Yeah.
Boy, that was a close one. I don't think I like this feature business. Gee, I wonder if I can get my job back again.
We cut to...
Daffy sitting on Leon's desk, chatting him up.
Here we do get that brief moment of Daffy is animated, Leon is moving. Yes. It all fits together very nicely. Daffy starts putting on a whole song and dance for him, and this is where he is like proper classic Daffy, where he's running all around, bouncing all around, moving so wildly fast, totally out of control, and Leon is simply not looking or paying any attention.
And all of a sudden, this is a cartoon about Daffy doing a funny song. And so the funny thing for us, knowing history, knowing that what is coming for Porky pretty soon, Leon's going like, yeah, whatever. He's completely bored by Daffy. But Daffy is the one who's actually like got an appealing personality, and he's actually going to become the star. But not today. Not in this cartoon.
It's amazing how beloved this cartoon is when it's just completely wrong.
But it's lovely. I mean, he has immediately, I think Daffy has more life than Porky does.
Yes. He starts singing a song about how famous he would be.
I'd be famous on the screen. My voice is so supreme. I put my heart and soul in each and every role. If it's grand opera, I'll be singing la 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 la.
So the lyrics that he's singing here seem to be original. The words he's singing, like, I'd be famous on the screen, the greatest ever seen. That seems to be original to this cartoon. The melody already existed as a song called Concert in the Park, but I can find very little information about that song, or whether or not it was successful, or even what the original lyrics were, at least from a quick Google. I did not spend much time on this.
And did it include singing grand opera while bouncing on your butt?
Somehow I think that was a Friz Freleng edition.
Yeah, that might have been a Daffy special.
Figaro, 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 Figaro. And now that you have seen my act, how's about a nice contract?
There's, I think, like a really, really clever shot with Porky driving down the street with these much, much bigger cars, and it's weaving around. I don't know where that footage comes from, but it's used really well.
I find that to be one of the funnier moments in the cartoon because he's like squeezing through impossible places, which raises the question of how it was even shot in the first place.
I am not sure.
If someone was on like a bicycle or a motorcycle or something like that.
I did see there is a blog post by Tralfaz about this moment. He's driving down Sunset Boulevard, and that blog post goes like frame by frame and shows all of the businesses and all of the street names that he passes by.
Very cool.
You should go and look this up. It's very fun.
I will look this up later. So Porky walks into the office on Daffy Duck, just disparaging him and being like, well, Porky never did anything. And Leon's just like, yeah, all right. Well, I'll think it over.
One thing that's funny about Leon in these Daffy scenes is he apparently he's unable to throw this duck out of his office.
That's true.
Uncle Leon is that nice.
Well, but also Daffy is that disruptive of a force. Yeah. He just is the embodiment of disruption. That's what he does to Porky's life here and in all his previous cartoons, and apparently what he does to Leon as well.
I find this scene kind of distracting because I'm worried about the impact of secondhand smoke on cartoon ducks.
Well, you will be happy to know that Daffy Duck is still working in pictures today. I think he turned out okay. So in this moment, Porky takes Daffy into another room, and we don't see it. We just see the papers flying out of the room, but presumably Porky just beats the crap out of him.
Which is wonderful, because Porky acts like a little child.
Yes, this is very much
cartoon.
A child.
He shows up, Uncle Leon, and he's like twisting his hat and everything. He's
got the
kid.
little kid hat. Yeah. No adult has a hat that looks like that.
Right. And then just like the second that he gets out of sight, he commits terrible, terrible violence.
Like children do. It's
on
very
Daffy
true.
Duck. Yeah.
And then Porky runs into Leon's office, goes through the wastebasket, finds the contract, insists, I didn't really want to get out of my contract, Leon. I was only fooling. April Fool. And Leon says, okay, Porky, I knew you'd come back. About that contract, I didn't tear it up. Now get back to the studio and get to work. Like, what do you mean you didn't tear it up? Like, again, like he did this performance earlier, I guess, of like switching out the contract, of like grabbing, like we see him with the live action contract.
He grabbed Betty Davis's contract, actually.
That makes sense. Like, I guess as Porky is grimacing and looking away, he makes the switch from the real contract to a cartoon contract, tears up the cartoon contract, throws that in the basket.
Right.
But in any case, Porky's very happy to do it.
And this is why it's profoundly depressing. Just from a labor practices point of view, he just goes right back into his cage. Yeah. Goes right back to his drawing. He signs up for another tour of duty. Like, the outside world is too scary.
Yep.
Let's go back to when you were exploiting me. That was great.
Yeah. Basically, yes, which is exactly what Friz has done in his real life, and he seems to be just as thankful.
Yeah.
But, like, Friz is also Daffy in that it was also Friz who chose to leave. Like, there wasn't someone tricking him to go to take his place at all. Like, it was Friz tricking himself into thinking that he could have a better life and ending up back in the same place. There's Daffy on the wall, now all like bandaged up from being abused by his coworker, Porky Pig. He's pitching him another idea, saying, I know where there's a pip of a job at $12,000 a week, playing opposite Greta, and then
smacks him in the face.
Tomato gets thrown at him before he can say Thunberg. He like throws the tomato off of his face and then looks to us and says, Garbo. And Iris out. That's all, folks.
And that's a great cartoon.
Now, Danny.
Yes.
We just spent a long time talking about that short.
Yes.
And I want to know if you were paying attention. What was the moral that Porky Pig learned in that cartoon? Hint, it's what this podcast has been about the whole time. If you had to distill it to 3 words, what does Porky learn to do?
Is there a timer? Is there like a tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock?
You have 5 seconds.
Is it, the system is fine? No, it's stick to shorts. Obviously, Porky has to stick to shorts.
Stick to shorts.
And that is what he does for the next 85 years.
That's what he does for a very, very, very long time. But isn't it strange then that this is the cartoon that lays the groundwork for Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which would bring Porky into a live-action feature film?
That's right.
He gets to be in features. In fact, he's like the last word, almost, very nearly. Tinkerbell is the last word in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but sort of. But like the last actual word, it comes from Porky Pig at the end of that acclaimed, beloved feature film.
Yep.
And then the Looney Tunes get to make their own feature films. You, for better or worse, you get your Space Jam.
Mm-hmm. You
get
Space
Looney
Jam
Tunes
too.
back in action.
Yep.
Space Jam: A New Legacy. And then finally, an animated feature film, breaking the binary established by this cartoon. He actually gets to be in cartoons and in a feature, and it's Porky and Daffy again. Yeah. This classic team from the 30s at it again on the big screen in the year of our Lord 2025. There's such a big story here, in my mind, in terms of how this cartoon is born of a failure, right? Like, it comes from Friz getting ambitious and thinking he can go on to something bigger and better. And then finding out that he absolutely can't. Remember, this is the guy who initially wasn't going to get into cartoons because he just thought he wasn't good enough.
Right.
And then he's also sort of the guy who becomes kind of wishy-washy in a way. He like seems to be moving from studio to studio to studio, not totally getting situated. Finally thinks like, maybe I'll actually go to the big grand studio. Immediately is like, no, this is a bad idea. This is not working. And has to go back to the Warner studio. And you know what, Danny?
What?
He stays there for ages. Like, to put this in context, Friz stayed with Schlesinger making Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies until Schlesinger sold the studio to Warner Brothers in 1944. At the newly christened Warner Brothers Cartoons in 1944, Friz kept directing Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies under the leadership of Eddie Seltzer until Seltzer's departure in 1958. And then he staged through the John W. Burton years, which lasted until 1960. That year, the Looney Tunes became television stars with The Bugs Bunny Show, and Friz directed original animated segments for that. He stuck with Looney Tunes through the David H. DePatie years until the studio was finally closed in 1963. Then, he and DePatie teamed up and started their own studio, which produced more Looney Tunes cartoons under contract with Warner Brothers. When Warner started making Looney Tunes TV specials in the late 70s, Friz directed the first one and his company produced all three of them. In the early 80s, he produced and directed, or at least directed parts of, 3 Looney Tunes compilation feature films for theaters. In other words, he came back to stay. He kept Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, and the Looney Tunes brand going for the following 4 decades and then some.
Yeah.
This was a powerful moment for Friz that we just watched. And it is that failure to actually get out of shorts and into features that paved the way for the Looney Tunes features to come, that paved the way to the rest of Friz's career and much of the rest of Looney Tunes history, to Roger Rabbit, to Vain Daffy, the version of Daffy that we now know and seems like the canonical Daffy, and also, let's not gloss over, Tom and Jerry. Because it was Friz going to, as we talked about in the last episode, it was Friz going to MGM, his comedy chops rubbing off on these other directors, and then him leaving and leaving a position vacant that enabled Hanna-Barbera, now having learned from him how to be funny, to step into that directorial position, and pretty much right out of the gate, they start Tom and Jerry.
Right.
Wouldn't have happened if not for the overall story that we have just seen depicted here and everything surrounding this cartoon. What in the world, Danny? What a wildly pivotal moment. And it's all about that lesson, stick to shorts. Which brings us to the big idea of this season that I didn't even know I was doing when I started it. I didn't even realize at the like this cartoon was not on the schedule when the first episode of the podcast came out, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I just kind of arrived at the inevitable conclusion, this is what the podcast is about. There is a contradiction at the heart of this podcast. It goes right back to episode 1, the very end of my introductory episode. I am encouraging the listener to go pursue their bold, wild ideas that everyone's going to call crazy. Go for it. Be ambitious. And then I say, when you do, I'll be the first person to tell you, stick to shorts. Meaning, stay in your lane, Give up on your ambition. Throw it out. And throughout the podcast, we've seen ambition have so many different results. It was the subject of One Froggy Evening. Maybe not the podcast episode, but the cartoon itself was about a guy who sees an opportunity for rich and fame, gets dollar signs in his eyes, tries to pursue it, and it completely destroys his life. In Brave Little Tailor, we focused some more on the Disney studio, which was all driven by an ambition to make cartoons more and more and more realistic, and it succeeded. At this period, like up until this point, everything Disney is trying to do is really successful because of how ambitious he was, and it was moving the whole thing forward. There was some personal notes in that episode you might recall as well, as Christy and I talked about some of our own dreams that did not go the way that we planned and how we learned to find more personal satisfaction in that anyway. Then we talked about some Tex Avery cartoons and about how Tex had his own ideas of cartoon perfectionism that he pursued relentlessly, and eventually he had to take a sabbatical from MGM because he stressed himself out too much from his own ambition and perfectionism and trying to get everything absolutely his way. The Superman episode, I will admit, does not totally fit into this because it was recorded before I knew that this was what the rest of the show was going, or what the rest of the season was going to be about. That was the second one recorded. But you still see the studio that started with Betty Boop and Popeye trying to not get the obligation of making these Superman cartoons, where we talked about how, like, Dave Fleischer, it was either Dave or Max Fleischer, threw out a number of, like, it would be wildly expensive, it would cost this much money, we're not going to do that, like trying to be anti-ambitious about such a big project. And then Paramount says, okay, the studio pushes this onto them, and they end up kind of having to act like they were ambitious, even though they did not mean to, and they end up taking cartoons to new heights that set standards for superhero media for decades to come. And then, of course, Tom and Jerry, born of two people who saw that there was some room vacant, like saw that there was a chance to be directors, and they seized it and made the most of it. That little bit of ambition that made them go, what if we were directors? Then led to them getting Academy Award after Academy Award after Academy Award. And we finally arrive at Friz's ambition, where he just says, nope, you'll never get out. And in so doing, ends up expressing that sentiment by making an incredibly complicated cartoon that fuses live action footage with animation and is therefore actually a very ambitious work. So what do I believe? Should you stick to shorts? Or should you not? The contradiction is there in the title even, just because it's a reference to a story about how everyone said about how one person said Walt Disney should stick to shorts, and they were wrong. I'm ending every episode telling the listener something that is notably wrong. That's the point of the story of Stick to Shorts. Don't listen to me. Everything I'm saying is untrustworthy and a lie. I have made this podcast an unsolvable contradiction to me. And that is in part because this podcast was supposed to be not an ambitious thing. It's just, like, I have tried to make a podcast about features before, Danny Horn. I tried. I recorded a pilot with Anthony in which we talked about Casablanca. That's a thing that you just haven't heard because I never edited it. But it's like, nope, too complicated. There's too much to talk about with features. Gotta keep it simple. And so I'm doing a podcast where all I have to do is talk about cartoons that are usually about 7 minutes long. That's it. I'm sticking to shorts. And it has turned into the most ambitious creative project I have ever taken on. I am stressing myself out so much that I need to take a sabbatical. This is an impossible podcast, Danny Horn. And so I don't know whether or not I believe stick to shorts because I can't tell whether or not I'm doing it. I can't tell if this right now is me reaching for the heights of feature films and MGM, or if I am giving up on all of the other things I want to do with my life because I know that this is my lane. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm good at making podcasts in which I think so much about things that are so unimportant, and I'm just sticking with it. I don't know. I haven't been able to figure it out, and I don't think this cartoon has really figured it out either. But I'm glad that the cartoon and I seem to be in sync. Danny, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I would like to put in a plug
Okay.
for the short I Love to Singa.
Yes, you've been wanting to talk about this cartoon.
1936.
Mm-hmm.
No, I can't follow. I can't follow. That was
Did you know that was coming?
no, and I was, as you could see, I am so pleased.
I did kind of have as part of the plan for this episode that I was going to have something of a mental breakdown. I knew it was kind of inevitable, and so I built that into my plan. But I didn't know it was going to be nearly as severe as it was. This has been a tough episode. There's just so much to talk about with it. It's such a big thing. And yet it seems like it's so silly. And yet it's just that little domino that knocks down so many other dominoes.
Yeah.
You know, I guess this speaks to a more foundational theme of the podcast, one that encompasses the big contradiction. You often don't know which of your efforts are a big deal and which are going to turn out to be trivial. The little things can surprise you and make a big difference. I mean, in the end, Daffy Duck has had more cross-generational appeal than Greta Garbo. I'd wager he's more famous and recognizable today. So, I guess in terms of whether or not to follow your ambition, there's never going to be a right answer. But what you do for now is the little things you can do. And then you see what happens. This cartoon appears in the book The 50 Greatest Cartoons, as selected by 1,000 animation professionals, in which it is ranked at number 34. It kicked off a terrific run for Friz Freleng at Warner's that would lead him to win the Warner Brothers Cartoon Studio its first award, and, perhaps more meaningfully, would ensure that animators would be admiring and studying his work to this day. Looking back on the making of this cartoon, Freleng said, "It was just a fun thing to do, and that was the reason for doing it." Folks, it's about time for us to say so long, but before we do, we'll let you know where you can find us. Danny, where can the people go to find you, your work, or anything you'd like to plug?
Well, I have recently-ish done a season of the Fantastic Miss Piggy Podcast, which is available on the Tough Pigs Muppet Fan podcast feed. It is a show all about my very favorite character in the world, Miss Piggy, and me trying to learn everything I possibly can about her. I also run the social media feed Muppet Pictures, which you can find at The Good Place, The Bad Place, and The Medium Place. It is delightful, and you should check that out as well.
You'll find me on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at JD11PC. You can find this show on Facebook or Blue Sky by searching for Stick to Shorts. Please be sure to give us a rating and review in your podcast app of choice, and tell your friends, your foes, and any other cartoon fans you know to give the show a try. For the next season, my hope is to cover a lot more of the essential early cartoons and to finally meet the Warner Brothers Studios' carrot-chomping star, Bugs Bunny. And you know what's more fun than Bugs Bunny cartoons? Contextualizing Bugs Bunny as the product of the development of character animation over the course of the 1930s. Learning is fun! Until then, please remember, the next time you try to be in pictures, stick to shorts for now. Just for now. You never know what features they might lead to someday.
Daffy, I think we survived. You did! Petunia! Go get him, Pork! Porky! We really did it. Way to go, Porkman! Wow, that was very not pleasant.
So long, folks.